Hello and welcome to episode 15 of our War and Peace 50 Pages a Day Quarantine Edition read through. This is covering pages 700 to 750. We've hit the lovely milestone of 750. I am Matthew Robinson, joined by my better half, Dimitri Portnoy. Welcome, Dimitri.
Welcome, Matt. Welcome, everybody.
Let's talk about these 50 pages today. We had some interesting stuff here. It's a churning, I would say. A slow boil is happening right now. Although we did get our first major death, I guess. Well, I guess
Second, but a character that we've known.
this is
Yes.
a bigger character than Liza was. Yeah, exactly. So we are speaking, of course, of Count Bolkonsky, who died, or Prince Bolkonsky, Andrei and Maria's father. He had a stroke caused by his daughter. She murdered him accidentally by sending baby Nikolishka off to Moscow and betraying his will to keep them all there. It caused him to have a stroke, which killed him. That's obviously quite sad. And Maria does not take it well, although she does have a nice reconciliation with Mademoiselle whatever her name is.
Yes. At her father's corpse, she
Yeah.
feels a horror.
Mm.
Uh, very much unlike the moment of reconciliation and love that she felt just before he died. And the contrast is very stark because, of course, Maria is the most religious character
Yeah.
of all of them. But she finds no comfort in her faith at that moment. The death strikes her probably the hardest of
Yeah.
all that we've seen so far.
And we get a very detailed look at the death process of of that period in Russia and the way that they deal with the body and how they put it on a table and they put strong smelling boughs underneath the table and
Juniper boughs,
yeah,
yes,
and
and
how
they
every
tie the mouth together
yeah,
to the
so
head
that
to
it
keep it from
doesn't
hanging
so it
open.
doesn't
They,
freeze open. Yeah.
yeah, they tie the ankles together so the legs don't spread. They put a priest on one shoulder
Yeah.
to recite. They welcome everybody to view the body. Again, it's very stark and provides no comfort to Maria, which Tolstoy is very honest about.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a tough pages to read.
Yeah, no, it's a very realistic death, and a very realistic grieving. Uh, and from there, if you thought before that there were moments that felt like Gone with the Wind, I mean, we really have Tara now, right? I mean, she decides she's going to take over the land and she will rule it and treat it well and do what her father would have wanted and rise it back from the ashes. And that doesn't go very well because the peasants basically tell her to piss off. And they've already been freed by Prince Andre, and so what they see, she was like, "Come with me to Moscow," and they're like, "We don't work for you anymore. We're free. We pay rent." Like she
We
was
don't
like,
want your grain.
"Yeah,
Uh,
we don't want your handouts because we don't want to be owned by you again. We don't want to owe you anything." And she says, "Well, at least furnish me with." Horses and carts that I can take to get to Moscow. And they say, no, those are ours. We need those. And we're going to stay here. And, we'll take our chances with Napoleon.
this is one of the two sections in this part of the book that I remember being excerpted as a short story
Oh, wow.
in YA readers
Oh,
for like,
crazy.
second or third grade.
Interesting.
Because for them, it's very class conscious.
Hmm.
In Soviet times, this is Tolstoy saying, yeah, hooray for the
Yeah. This is the
proletariat.
rising up of the peasants. Yeah.
And the second section that was excerpted as a short story from this section, do you want to guess what it is? It's not an obvious choice.
Um, Interesting. Let's see here. I mean, the obvious choice would be Nikolai showing up and binding them with their own belts, but perhaps it's Kutuzov's speech about how the French will eat horse flesh.
No, it's actually Lavrushka
Okay.
outsmarting Napoleon,
Ah, okay.
which was presented as this peasant outsmarting an emperor.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And interesting, in Tolstoy's presentation, they're kind of fooling each other.
Yeah.
Certainly, Lavrushka knows exactly who he's talking to, and he feeds him information that's true, but is ultimately going to be damaging.
Yeah, sure, sure.
But that's, for Tolstoy, mostly a sign of and an outcome of Napoleon's self-certainty and self-focus, that he takes information that should worry him,
Hmm.
and in fact gives him certainty instead.
I wonder what
But
they would, those same YA Russian readers would have thought of Nikolai showing up in this, almost over the top, chivalrous, heroic moment, and the authority of his voice and the power of his wealth and station in life cows them back into their peasant mind state, and to the point where they're taking off their own belts to bind themselves. I mean, it's a dark look at the the oligarchy of the oppressed, right? I mean, it's
oh,
these
sure.
how easily the serf mind state is just gaslit right back into fruition.
It doesn't occur to them that they outnumber him hundreds to one,
Yeah,
and they could pull
yeah.
him off a
No,
horse.
it's just one 21-year-old man on a horse. I don't even think he has a weapon, and he gets them all in line, to put it bluntly. I
Yeah,
mean,
this is Tolstoy being extremely class conscious,
yeah,
and again being completely non-sentimental. I
yeah,
don't think he turns the mujiks, which is what they're called.
peasants, yeah.
By the way, muj means husband in
Hmm.
Russian. So these are people who do husbandry,
Like animal
take care of
husbandry,
the
and yeah.
farm and take care of
Hmm.
the animals. That's the root in both languages.
Interesting.
Um, and Tolstoy doesn't really make you sympathize with either side.
Sure.
He reminds you that Nikolai has a dog in this fight that we don't exactly sympathize with.
Yeah.
He's ultimately driven by a desire to impress Maria,
Yeah.
so he could get her money, so he could rescue his family,
Yeah.
and once again forget Sonia.
Right.
Putatively his love.
Well,
So
which
there's no purity of purpose on either side,
right.
to me that makes it even more heartfelt and pitiful, the whole
And
situation.
Maria continuing her sort of fall from grace, allows herself to admit that she's in love with Nikolai after spending 10 minutes with him. It didn't take much.
Sure. Now, granted, she, in her eyes, becomes the heroine of a romance
Yes,
novel,
of course.
and she's almost duty bound to
Yeah.
fall in love with a man who literally rides to her rescue,
Yeah.
right? Uh, but of course, Tolstoy is both having fun here
Yeah.
with the genre, but
Yeah.
he's also, I think, accurately representing the mindset of a homebody.
Yeah. And in a
Someone who
sense.
probably has never been to a ball and
Yeah.
never danced with a man, and never even considered the romantic attachment
Yeah.
outside of the wildly inappropriate Anatoly.
Sure. And Nikolai says, he lays it out pretty well. It's like, look, this would be good for me. She's very plain faced, but she would make a great wife. I could have feelings for her, and I genuinely think it would bring her happiness. I mean, he's not Anatoly. He's not, I'm gonna steal her money and then do what I want. He actually is he thinks that a marriage to him would bring her joy, and he likes that.
That's right. But he's thinking of his family's approval
Sure.
and of
Yes.
Maria's joy,
Yeah.
much more than of his own.
Right. No.
I don't think he's
He's not in
anything
love with
other
her.
than okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it just makes sense. It's part of him growing up is that he's not putting himself first. That's sort
Sure.
of his theme, is learning to put others first. It's something that he's striving to learn. So from there, we get Prince Andrei, who is stationed with Kutuzov, who's become the commander in chief of Russia. the right hand of the emperor, but probably more powerful than the emperor, the man calling the day-to-day shots. Denisov shows up, our old dancing friend, or now a crippled dancing friend.
But having survived the hospital of
Yeah,
death
he's back,
that we
and
saw 100 pages ago.
he is as fearless of authority as he is of risking his own life in battle, and pitches his idea of what they should do directly to Kutuzov, which is he's a low ranking officer, basically going to the top general and saying, I think you should do this, and Denisov just finds it all boring, and Andre is an interesting moment watching this man as all these different people petition their ideas of how to save Russia, and he just seems utterly bored by it all. And Nikolai gets the idea that this man has already succumbed to whatever fate or destiny awaits them, and either that or he has some grand plan he's not sharing. But regardless, this man seems like he's a part of the machinations of destiny, and not necessarily somebody who can be swayed or changed by anything else that's happening right now.
But the translators and Tolstoy's own footnotes say that Denisov's plan is an historical plan that was actually put into action by that character's historical counterpart and really worked. It was basically a very novel way to bring guerrilla warfare to the enemy to disrupt their communication and supply lines. And it's a real thing. And I was so shocked to see that Denisov, with his speech impediment, is based on a real character. It's based on a real person who made a real difference.
Yeah, and almost everybody is based on somebody to a certain extent. Then we move to Moscow, and we get one of my favorite sections about... Tolstoy, if there was an Olympics for observation, Tolstoy would be the unbeatable gold medalist of all time. And just his ability to notice every tiny detail and then to just go very, very out and make such a wild generalization about all of humanity that rings so true and is so cuts to the bone. I'll just read the section that I love. This is how the people in Moscow are dealing with the impending encroachment of Napoleon's army. At the approach of danger, two voices always speak with equal force in a man's soul. One quite reasonably tells the man to consider the properties of the danger and the means of saving himself from it. The other says, still more reasonably, that it is too painful and tormenting to think about the danger, when it is not in man's power to foresee everything and save himself from the general course of things, and therefore it is better to turn away from the painful things until they come and think about what is pleasant. In solitude, a man most often yields to the first voice. In company, on the contrary, to the second.
And just 3 weeks ago, I experienced that very thing, as I'm sure
we all
so
did
you.
Yeah, we all went through the differing of like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to save myself, and then you vacillate by the end of the day to like, what are we really worrying about here? This is crazy. How can we even? It'll be what it'll be. And we might as well just bake cookies and watch, Tiger King.
And reading it in a novel from 150 years ago is comforting. It crystallizes precisely what you're feeling.
Yeah.
What millions of people are feeling.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
There's something
I did not expect that from War and Peace. I thought it would be much more of an historical document. It would take me a lot of work to make it relevant, but the novel is actually doing that work for me. And saying, "Hey, listen to this. This is you." And I go, "Oh yeah." I have no argument.
That's what I feel like Tolstoy does better than any other writer I've ever experienced, which is that he takes the human experience and makes it becomes equally depressing and uplifting how singular the human experience is and how non-unique all of our experiences are. How there's something powerful and profound in that, but also somewhat melancholy as well, I guess.
I want to say something that in the translation, they mentioned that the Russian word for peace and the Russian word for world are the
Mm.
same word. It's
Mm.
mir.
Mm-hmm.
So the Russian title, Vaina et Emir, could also be translated as war and the world.
Mm. Interesting.
And of course, we expect it to be War and Peace because we expect there to be opposites.
Yeah.
But this is a truly universal novel.
Yeah.
And I think War in the World is as appropriate a title. And
Yeah.
it's certainly available there for you to take if you wish it.
Amazing. All right. Well, that seems like a good place to end it for the night. We do get just one last little thing at the end. Everything's business as usual in Moscow. Parties are going on. Pierre goes to a party. There's gossip of Nikolai's rescue of Maria. There's gossip of Pierre saving Natasha's soul. Um, and yes, I will just brush over the Kutuzov's famous speech about how the French will eat horse flesh at some point, meaning starve and die in their land. And that's what he's banking on, which is not a great war strategy, but in the end is the strategy that wins. Is they just
It's sort
starve.
of, as God is my witness,
Yeah,
they'll forever be hungry.
yeah, exactly.
The opposite of Gone with the Wind.
Well, one of my favorite parts of the day, Dimitri, is talking War and Peace with you and not changing diapers or trying to potty train my children.
Oh, if you need help with that, ask someone else,
Yeah,
please.
I can ask no one because we're quarantined. I can ask my wife, and she could say, "No, you do it,"
Matt,
because
you
she's
are my
busy.
hero.
And you, Dimitri. We will continue tomorrow with page 800 as we continue our downhill descent on the back half, the back nine of War and Peace. Until then, dear hearts, I wish you adieu.
Adieu, adieu to you and you and you.